Calvin, Justin, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to get this started at the highest possible level. Give me the overview. What is the Deal Points Report? What does it capture? Why should people be paying attention?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. The Deal Points Report is a pretty unique vehicle or creature in the Canadian ecosystem. So several years ago, we decided at Osler that we had unique access to data on the Canadian tech ecosystem in terms of what was actually happening on the ground in Canadian tech financings. And there's really no other source in Canada that can delve into the details of the financing. So there's lots of great information you can find from organizations like the CVCA, but those tend to announce the transactions and maybe the dollar value. In our case, we were able to use all of the transactions we work on, given the market share that we hold, and to really dig into a lot of data points. So for example, this year's report is about 686 preferred share financings, and it's about 15 billion of total transaction value. And so that really gives us, looking over that 4 or 5 year period, a lot of information that we can drill down on and develop actionable insights about what's actually going on.
I did notice in the report, you've got this now dedicated data set of safes and convertible notes. I'm assuming that's part of the visibility of getting a level of deal granularity that aren't often found in most other reports?
Yeah, 100%. So we noticed that those were becoming more and more prevalent and relevant to the overall financing market when you look at it from the perspective of the total year's activity. In particular, over the last couple of years, coming out of the highs of 2021 and then the lows of 2023. And so we thought it was important to try to capture that data set for bridges or seed financings and for the types of financings that are really using those convertible instruments.
All right, let's dig into the deal points then. In this year's report, what stood out the most in the data?
Maybe I'll start with that one, Calvin. I mean, to me, it's clearly the AI story, and it's not just in our Deal Points report. It's obviously something that you can't go 5 minutes without thinking about or reading about. But that trend of the prominence of AI was definitely emergent. It's always been an important part of our financing ecosystem, but this year it really jumped, and it represents like half of the total transaction value happened in the AI space.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting is that in 2023 we decided to take AI out of the information technology bucket and start tracking it separately. So I guess it's been 2 years now that we've been tracking it, and to see it grow so tremendously to being about 54% of deal value is quite stunning. And we've been seeing IT dropping, both also because the AI is no longer tracked there in our deal study, but that's been an interesting trend. It's also the size of the AI round. Although they represent 54% of value, they're about 23.6% of all deals.
Yeah, so, let's dig into that, right? Beyond sectors, let's just talk about the market. This has been an ongoing conversation in Canadian tech. Your report is saying that you saw investment rebound to roughly 4.5 billion in 2025, which is nearly triple 2023 levels. If we want to go decade-long comparison, though, it might be a different story. Is this a recovery? And if so, what's driving that?
I think it is a recovery. I think you have to be a little bit cautious when you look at the total dollar values raised, because a lot of that is heavily weighted towards late stage financings. So if you have $1 billion financing transaction in Canada, that obviously can move the needle on a quarterly or an annual outcome. So certainly looking beyond just the dollars, if you look at valuation metrics, I think you can point to a recovery. We're seeing far fewer down rounds, a real uptick in up rounds to I think around 76%. And the flat rounds have moderated at a level that I think shows it's a baseline level. So I look at this and see recovery, but it's not uniform across sectors and it's not uniform across stages.
One of the other more surprising findings in the report is the dilution is decreasing across every stage. Is that a correlated data point? Is that coincidental? How are you seeing those play together?
I personally think you have to look at, there's two different reasons why we're seeing dilution dropping. So either it's because valuations are increasing and round sizes are staying the same, and that's true in some of the categories when you look at our report, or valuations are staying constant, but the amount of capital being raised is lower.
So the report is also tracking a rise in secondary transactions, particularly in the later stages, with around, I think, 60% of the Series C deals, including a secondary. What's driving that trend, and is it tied to any of the other trends that we've discussed?
From my perspective, and I'll let Calvin weigh in as well, but from my perspective, secondaries have become an important part of the market in the growth stages. for a couple of reasons. One, the time to IPO has extended. I mean, look at the largest tech companies in many cases in the US are still private, and the same is true in many cases in Canada. So the time to IPO or M&A event, exit event has extended, and you've got founders looking for some liquidity. You've got certainly early investors who have fund life cycles that suggest that they're looking for early liquidity as well.
Your report is showing that founders are also typically losing board control around the Series B stage. How should they be thinking about that governance dynamic when they're engaging with the new rounds, financing, the secondary components, the pre-IPO public market considerations? How does governance play a role in these deals?
On the mathematical piece, one thing I'd add is probably at the Series B, you are seeing the investor base taking a pretty large portion of the cap table. There's always this concept in governance. If we remove ourselves from the idea of VC and founder control, there's a general rule in good governance that there should be proportionality. And so at the Series B, we tend to see the shift happen where even the ownership percentage is more controlled by the investor base. And so it's also, I would think, linked to why that is the stage at which founders lose control of the board.
Okay. Given everything that you're paying attention to across the 2025 Deal Points Report, what does that signal to you directionally for 2026 and the deals that you're working on right now?
I guess when I look at the 2025 data, I'm looking at 2026. So we've seen these mega rounds in AI, and we've been seeing a lot of deals happening in the early stage of clean tech and health and health and life sciences. I spoke about there being a lot of dry powder. So I'm hoping to see a lot of conversion of the seed rounds into Series A's and to B and get them into real growth stage companies and scale-ups. That would be amazing to see that. Maybe not in 2026 right away, but hopefully early signs of that. And then generally, we spoke about those three big sectors. We didn't speak very much about other ones like fintech, consumer, IT generally. So hopefully some of the cash is also spread to other industries and vertical.
Both of you helped build this report. Walk us through how the data is collected and parsed and how that gives you confidence in the numbers.
It's a bit of a grassroots effort, Doug. So I can't not mention all of our team of associates and paralegals and staff that help getting this data in. It's a large volume, and so at the end of every deal, it is the team responsible for the deal, who ran the deal, that has to input the data that then gets aggregated and analyzed by the team that generates the report. So that's why it's grassroots. It's a lot of effort, and we can rely, I guess we find a great portion of why the data is reliable is because it is the people who are doing these deals that are vetting it, confirming it, and making sure that the right data is used for analysis.
Okay. So there's so much data in the report, there's so much depth to the data. Any guidance that you have to ensure that readers aren't misapplying or misinterpreting that data?
My own guidance would be, you obviously have to pay attention to detail. So, and this is something we see in the marketplace, like people make broad statements about things like valuation or the AI sector or how the Canadian ecosystem trails the US ecosystem, et cetera. But really try to be specific. So what specifically if you're a founder, what specifically are you doing? What industry are you in? What stage are you at? And trying to really think about how these data points matter to you in the context of your particular financing. And then of course, the obvious one is speaking to somebody at Osler about it, because the data is just sort of the entry into the conversation about what's behind it and what the implications could be for your startup or your growth stage company.
Yeah, and just to continue off what Justin just ended with, I think the deal report study is a benchmark. So I think it's interesting to use it as that starting point as to where do we think we should be situated. Then the discussion has to go into why should we deviate from it? Why is my case particular? I would also add, and I'd put a caveat, that these are the 140 deals for 2025 that we have done. It's a tranche of the overall investments that are done in Canada. So there's also that caveat I would add.
Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to digging even deeper into the report.
Thanks, Douglas.
Thanks, Douglas.